Hello JavaScript, Toby is presenting Wish.js and D3, just some libraries, and Alex is presenting Leaflet, which is the base for our map. So to start with SVG, what is SVG? SVG are scalable vector graphics, which are used for 3D and 2D illustrations, but mainly for 2D illustrations. It features an XML structure. It's similar like HTML, so if you know HTML, you can possibly learn SVG quite fast. And the SVG DOM is like the HTML DOM, scriptable and searchable. And it's an official standard, and it's commonly adopted. I think since the last 5 years you can really use it, but with the IE Edge coming out, every major browser supports it. So what can be in an SVG? An SVG can contain text, vector graphics, or images. It mustn't contain all, it needn't contain all of them, but you can bundle it there. You can apply filters and some further stuff. So these are all in an SVG. But what's the purpose of an SVG? We have PNG, JPEG, GIF, and there are other things already. Mainly SVG is used for vector graphics. So I have the PNG here, which is already compressed with some libraries, and it has a size of 3K. And the SVG has 1.4K. So I say double, okay, 1,400 bytes, not many. But if I increase the size of the SVG, it remains crisp, it looks good. And if I increase the PNG, of course, it looks not good. And I can fix it by using more pixels. But when I'm using more pixels, I almost have the 10 times the amount of the SVG of data. So when I'm having vector images which are some shapes or some symbols, like the icon fonts Project F mentioned, these are similar to SVG. Basically, they are vector graphics. So there's a need for vector graphics. Basically, SVG works like HTML. Each primitive has its own tag. So you have the line tag, which makes a line. You have the start point of the line, you have the end point of the line, and now the line is there. Similar to rectangle, you have two edges, and the rectangle is spanned between both of the edges. And the ellipse, of course, if you have the radius similar, radius x and radius y similar, you have a circle. And now this is how SVG works. You have, of course, polygons and some further stuff. But like in Project F, we have no styles at it yet. So we can just assign styles like fill blue, stroke with 5 pixels, or stroke style red to the ellipse in this case. But we can, of course, assign the styles all to the same ellipse. So we have a blue ellipse with a red border of 5 pix weight. So this is considered in HTML, it would be a bad practice comparable to the old font tag, where you have it all in the tag. So you can use CSS for SVG as well, and it works quite similar to HTML. But the problem is, like in mail applications, they still use the font tag, like this is ancient since 10 years ago. SVG is created by Adobe Illustrator, Inkscape, and so on. And in Inkscape, you have a shape. You assign a color to the shape, and Inkscape does the same in SVG. It assigns the color directly to your shape. So you have to make semantic decisions to work with CSS in SVG, and this isn't that easy as writing it directly to the shape. So I think it will take some time until the major graphic programs, the Illustrator and the Inkscape, will provide it in CSS. So this is the main overview for SVG. Does anyone have further questions on SVG? Okay.
Yes, just one maybe. Why don't we use it for everything if it's so great and it saves so much memory?
It only saves memory when using it on vector graphics. If I'm bundling an image, it's like loading the image and loading the SVG around the image, so it isn't great at all. So.
I don't know why you say that it's saving it saves memory. If I actually create a bunch of SVG items that are really tiny,
yes,
and I have millions of them, then essentially my HTML is going to be megabytes.
This is? Yeah,
HTML file is going to be megabyte size.
Yes, but if I'm using images which do have more size than the SVG, you have more megabytes than using SVG. Or what I don't know.
PNG is megabyte size?
if you mean if I have very detailed images in the canvas in SVG, so I can strip down the images using a simplified version, or just stick to the PNG. I think in some cases it makes sense to use SVG, so you have to compare it before you use it. But most web developers don't have in mind that SVG actually exists. So I wanted to bring up that for some cases, like this font icons, you can save memory by using vector fonts or vector-like scalable vector graphics.
Okay. You can show them?
The fonts are not in our responsibility because Project F has mentioned that them already, I think, shortly.
All right, so never mind.
Okay. HTML canvas is another aspect to have a drawing context in JavaScript. So it's standard in HTML5. It's basically a blank element where you can draw on with JavaScript. Mostly use it with 2D drawings, but now it's supported to use 3D scenes by using WebGL. It was originally developed by Apple for its WebKit engine, and later on it became WhatWG standard, and this led to the HTML5 improvement. So why do we need Canvas? Canvas is basically an image, a blank image, where you can draw on with JavaScript. So the browser renders this as an image. If you just draw complex figures like many polygons with big data, you have basically for the browser it's an image in the DOM, so it's easily handleable. And you can draw images on the canvas or even videos if you refresh the canvas often enough. So basically how it is working. It's like in the real world when I have a canvas like this, I set it up, then I have to think about what I want to do, so like stroking a line, and then choose the brush, the color and so on, and all the attributes, and then draw it. To have this in mind, I have a demo, so I'll set up the canvas. It's quite easy, so I have the canvas element in HTML. It is important to have width and height specified. Otherwise, I have a canvas with zero height, zero width, and it's no canvas, so you can't draw on not an existing canvas. The next thing is I have to find the canvas element in the DOM. And I have to get the drawing context. This drawing context provides all the features I need, like draw the line. But I have an example, and the height I need it later for the example. So, like I want to draw a line. This is the canvas on the other side. So I begin the path. This just basically starts a path. And in the corner you see like this is my pen or my point where I am. So I move to another point, because I want to start the line at the bottom. So this was the move to. Afterwards, I want to draw a line too, so I just think on drawing a line and then I have this dotted line. But the line isn't there on the canvas yet, yes?
Where's the starting point 0, 0 of the canvas?
The 0, 0, 0 is in the top left.
Okay. Oh.
Okay, always in the top left. So I have to, it's a good practice to just move before drawing the line, but to be sure your line is actually drawn from where you want to where you want. So I'm in the bottom, I have stroked this line, but no, I haven't stroked the line yet. So next thing is pick the brush. So I have my stroke style, but stroke style basically is this tiny black dot here. It's 1 pixel. So I have to increase this to actually be visible. And to make it more fancy, I make it red. So I have picked the stroke style. I know what I want to do. So I do it by just setting the stroke method. So I have the red line on the canvas. But you can't only draw lines. So I have a little more complex example. This is like a Monte Carlo method to estimate P. You're putting points and points, and you're counting how many are in the circle and how many are outside the circle, and you divide it. So what we want to do. If we go back, we draw a grid. You see it in the background. A grid are many lines, so we covered it already. Draw an arc. This is the blue arc, so we have to do this, and the randomized points. So to the arc. Arc works similar. I have the begin path, so I begin a new path. I'm there in the top angle, so I have to move to where it should actually begin. So I move to the top left angle. Then I'm drawing arc. This is more complex than a simple function because you specify the tangents by the points. I've marked it in colors here, and you find the similar colors there. You have one tangent from yellow to red, one tangent to red to this bluish color, and the radius in green. So afterwards, you just make this function. You have this arc dotted, and it's the same like before. you have your stroke style, you again make it bigger and make it in this case blue. So I have the blue and I stroke it. And basically this is where it works. The random points are also similar. I have to, but now I won't stroke it, but I fill the rectangle. So I have the rectangle here. I subtract 1 and 1 because I have a 2 by 2 rectangle which should be centered on my point. So this is basically just setting the rectangle up. And after setting the rectangle up there, I chose the brush, which is dependent on whether I'm in the circle or out of the circle, which is green or red. In this case, I'm in the circle, so I will paint it green. And this is done by the fill method. The fill method, there are some shortcuts like fill rect and so on, but it is basically the same like thinking about what you want to do, thinking about how you want to do, and then do it. So just compare it a little bit. Both can draw via JavaScript. Both have a good documentation in many libraries. But in SVG, you can edit each element individually because each element has its own node. In Canvas, you have an image. You can't redo your changes quite easily. You have like restore, canvas, and so on, but it's a nasty way to do it. You can handle object events directly on SVG elements, like it's scriptable. Canvas can't do this. You have to have mouse listeners and find out, draw polygons in JavaScript on the canvas, find out where the mouse over the canvas is actually. And rescaling images works with SVG. If I rescale a canvas, it's gone. You have to redraw the canvas after rescaling it. So it seems SVG is much better than Canvas, but this isn't. So I have set up a small demo just to show it. Can you start it with the Morris? I have two libraries. One of them is Morris.js and one of them is Digraphs. Digraphs is a Canvas-based library. I just refresh it. These are around 120 data points of weather, so I can zoom in and so on. And if the other demo is coming, problem is, Morris, yes. This one works smooth. You have a canvas which contains the background data, another canvas which contains this nice here, and I also put an alert there because Morris uses SVG, puts all the 120,000 points in the DOM, and so I think maybe the browser crashes, you see there, and yes, it's not so fast. Good, this was the point. So you have a need for both of them. You can use both SVG and Canvas if it's appropriate. So this was the basics about Canvas and SVG and the small comparison. Does anyone have questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you create a canvas, wait on it, and then somehow make a copy of it? I don't know, story something?
You can export the canvas to any format you like. There are some, I don't know how the methods are exactly called, but you can export it to PNG and you get the PNG string and save it.
Would that allow you to implement some sort of undo functionality?
It would allow you to undo the steps you did, but you can't if you, for example, did a mistake in the first step, do 100 steps, you can't undo only your first step. You must go all the changes backwards. You have only this save an image and reload the image to the canvas. Further questions? Okay. Oh, right.
So, where does it go? So yeah, I will talk about the framework libraries, I will just skip my first 3 slides because the projects before just mentioned it. Why do we need frameworks? And I will dive into my first framework library, namely Wiz.js. Wiz is a visualization, dynamic browser-based visualization library, and it is made to be easy to use and to handle a large amount of data, and it enables manipulation of and interaction with data. It consists of 5 components, name it dataset, timeline, network, graph 2D, and graph 3D. And I will go into deeper to the network. Network is a visualization to visualize networks. It consists of nodes and edges, and it works smoothly for modern browsers for up to a few thousands of nodes. And then for a larger amount of nodes and edges, it uses clustering, and it also uses HTML canvas for rendering. So here is a small example of a network. It's easy to use. We have first to we include first the CSS files and JavaScript files of this, and just set here the frame where we want to put this network in CSS. Then in JavaScript, if we have added these lines before, we can specify our nodes and our edges by just creating an arrow with nodes, by saying with.dataset and giving them an ID, the nodes, and a name. And we can create an arrow with edges by just saying from idea to the other idea. And then if we have added this data, we can initialize the network by just saying new with.network and passing this three parameters: container, data, and options. Container creates a network. It says where to put this network, and data provides the data in the with format. And additionally, you can use this object options to just like here change the border width of the nodes. So I will show you how it looks like. Yeah, it's here already, and there are some features like zooming out, zooming in. You can touch them and just it's funny. So yes, so let's move on to more powerful framework library, namely D3. D3 stands for 3Ds. It's data-driven documents. It is de facto the standard JavaScript framework library when it comes to visualization of data and manipulation of data. And it uses the mainly implemented SVG, HTML5, and CSS3 to make the data alive. So the rest of the W question is who developed D3. It's Mike Bostock. He developed D3 as a PhD student at the Stanford Visualization Group. And he now works for the New York Times because the New York Times sponsors his open source project. So next one is why you should use D3. It's because it lets you build the framework you want. D3 is written in JavaScript and uses a functional style, which means you can reuse the code and add specific functions to your heart's content, and which means it is as powerful as you want to make it. So then when you should use D3, you should use D3 when the web page interacts with data and for any visualization. And where to use it? You use it in the front end and use the data of the back end. So here's a small example of a chart. It's first I will show you in that is like you do it without JavaScript. You just make some divs and set the width of the div and put the text in, and yes, just here in CSS you just style it, and you say that the background is steel blue and the text align is right and the color is white. So now I'll show you how you do it with D3. You have the HTML code here, just saying a class chart and including the D3 library, and the same CSS lines like before. And then in JavaScript looks like this. You have this array data, then you select the chart container and select the selection to which you will join the data, like with the dot data, and then you just append it, and in the last two lines you style it, the width. You can, like you see here, you are passing this parameter function where you just return the scale by a multiple of 10 pixels, and at the end you just set the text.
All right, so everybody understand what's going on here with D3, why this example is so important to understanding how D3 operates. Yeah? What's that?
It's a chain.
It's a chain function, that's fine. But what really is going on here? What are you seeing in this code example? Anybody? Start with the select. What does the select give us?
The div container where we should put our graph.
Right, that's where the graph is going to go. Good. Now, the next interesting part is the enter. Can someone explain what's the enter function does? Or maybe you guys want to.
Basically, it adds data to the DOM.
I'm sorry?
Basically, it attaches the data to the DOM, to the node.
It attaches the data to the DOM. Okay.
To the
That's the entire goal for this.
yeah, since here the selection is empty, and then you append it to since there is the selection is empty, and then you append it.
Yes, you append it, right. What's really happening here in terms of how would you write it in an imperative way? What is D3? Why is D3 so unique in the sense that it uses functional programming? I mean, it's easier.
Because it maps each one of the data to a div.
Very good. So what does it save us? I'm doing it.
So it loops.
Each one is like do it for each one and inject the data to each one of them.
Correct. We're essentially having DOM elements being mapped directly to our data points. And then we can essentially iterate on them. We can get whatever facilities that we can use on the data from this. And this is the major point to take out of what D3 is providing us. You essentially can put in lambda functions into it that would actually manipulate your data within, by the way, the set of chained operations. All right. So never approach D3 from an imperative programming approach, or from an imperative programming standpoint. Essentially, all needs to you need to understand how this functions and how you could actually use data point to tie into your document.
So D3 tells you what to do, or
sorry, what?
D3 tells you what to do. If imperative is like telling you how to do.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So yeah, short demo. It's like a simple bar chart. Yes, I will pass to Alex. He will tell you more about Leaflet.
So until now you have seen a couple of different ways to visualize data, but one very important category is still missing. And this part will be with Leaflet. So probably all of you know interactive web maps, and this is what Leaflet does. We can create interactive web maps, and therefore Leaflet is the most popular and currently used JavaScript library for interactive web maps. It's used by Facebook, Evernote, GitHub, and other huge companies. And Leaflet itself has no dependencies, so when including Leaflet, you don't have to include other libraries additionally to run Leaflet. And it was developed by Vladimir Agafonkin, who is living in Kiev, Ukraine. Leaflet itself is very lightweight with just about 33 kilobyte of data, and it's simple and flexible, what you will see in the demo later on. Furthermore, it has a very high performance, and it has a well-documented API which can be seen on its homepage here. So to show you the benefits of Leaflet, we will look at the requirements we need for creating a map. So this is our map. You can see parts of Europe and a small part of Russia. And if we want to zoom into Germany, for example, we have two different ways to do this. Either we are using a huge file, a very huge image of the whole world, which would cost probably all of our memory and a lot of performance. And well, it would be just a bad solution because we would have too much details. And if we have the map on its own and then we zoom in, we would either have just low detail, so if we just apply it for the whole overview, or we would have too much information displayed in the outzoomed view. So if we just use it and zoom in, we would get a very pixeled picture as well. Therefore, we can use tiles. So what are tiles? If we resume to our example here, our map, the map we can see in our view, in our container, is divided into different parts. So here we have 4 tiles. Those tiles are pictures normally with 256 to 256 pixels, and when we construct our view, we just load the pixels we need for this area, and we also load images surrounding our current view, so when panning we don't have to load them. And we have a smooth panning of the map. Now, if we zoom in, we just replace our current tile we zoom in with another tiles. In this case, again 4 with higher details. So we get a higher amount of detail. So therefore we can zoom in and pan the map by loading the tiles. And well, then we have the 4 different pixels, and well, as I already told you, they have normally a size of 256 to 256 pixels, sometimes even higher. But why do we need Leaflet now? So we don't want to write everything ourselves. Therefore, we can use Leaflet, and it offers us the possibility to create maps very easy. Then it also provides panning and zooming, and manage the tiles. We can furthermore not only use one source for the tiles, but we can mix tile sources. And we have additional features for our maps. So therefore, we can also add markers and pop-ups to display data on our map. Then we can also use vector layers like circles, rectangles, or polygons. And with polygons, we can create triangles or even higher numbers. You will see in our project demonstration later on how we used them. So we actually needed polygons. And you can even display images and canvas overlays. Sorry. And if the normal functionalities of Leaflet aren't enough, there are a lot of plugins. So then you also have event handling, but as we're running out of time, we won't go any deeper into it. What do you need to set up Leaflet? Well, you simply just need to include the CSS of Leaflet and the library into the HTML document, and in the CSS you can define the container for your map. For example, here we've set up a container for the map with 300 pixels. And then you also have to create a variable where and map the variable with the container in our HTML document. Therefore, we are using the map function, which is provided by Leaflet, and in the HTML document we are setting an ID for our container, so here we have to name the container to connect it. Then we can use setView to just center our view. So here I'm saying I'm using those coordinates as the center of my current view, and this is the zoom level I'm using. And tile layers is the function we need for including our tiles. So therefore we can add our URL, and then we have three variables, set, y, and x. So set is our zoom level, and y and x are our normal lat long coordinates. And we can also specify our maximum zoom level. So why do we need it? Well, for example, we don't want to zoom in with about, let's say, 30 zoom levels, because it would be useless in our case. So here we can define it. And then we have to add our tiles to our current map. So here we're using the map. And how this whole thing works, you will see in the demo. And the demo will be just a short overview, and we will show you more examples of Leaflet in the demonstration of our project later on. So, yeah.
So basically you took the map of Game of Thrones and then you have to cut it into tiles. And
I will go there into details in the project part, but basically yes. So here, as you just saw, in our JavaScript file, I defined my current view, and I've used for the demo the World Street map. So with the zoom level and yeah. So. No, the wrong one. Yeah, and that's our current view at the moment. So now I wanna show some markers at my map. So I just create a variable marker and give to it the reference from my leaflet function marker with my coordinates of the marker and add it to my map. I also have the possibilities and the options to, for example, change the opacity or the color. So, and now you can see we have a marker. Well then, I can also add a circle, for example, and this is as easy as adding a marker. I just have to type in the center of my circle and then assign the radius. Therefore, then I can, for example, assign a special color. The default color is normally red, but here I assigned the color blue and add it to my map. So here we have a blue circle. You can also create polygons the same way. You just take the polygon function and give different values to it. In this case, it's 3 different points, and then the polygon function creates a triangle in this case. If I want to have more edges, I can just add more points to it. And in this case, I also added some options. So I said my color should be red, and other options I can add are, for example, the fill color as well as the opacity of the filling. Yeah, and then we don't only want to assign objects to it, but we always want to display some information. Therefore, I can just bind pop-ups to my different objects. So in this case, I'm just binding a pop-up to my marker. Therefore, I'm using my marker, say bind pop-up with a text I want to display and open the pop-up. I can also do the same thing for circles and other objects. It's just the same.
Yeah. Are there other events I can pick up, or is this just click and bind pop-up?
Leaflet also has an event handler, so therefore you can add different events. I had a slide with some small examples just on the surface. Yeah, so there are other events as well.
Nice.
And as you can imagine, we, with Project C, had the task to create a map for Game of Thrones. So what we had to do is, we are getting a map, and we should display the locations of the characters. We should also provide a very easy user interface. You should also be able to show the locations of different characters at the same time, so you could find out if they have met or not. And when clicking on some locations, we should provide data. So what we used for our project were Bootstrap, jQuery, and Leaflet, of course. Also, the map you saw just is the HBO base map, but it doesn't contain any layers at all. So no regions, no cities, nothing like that. And we also used the wiki and some other fan projects which provided us more information in the wiki itself. Our workflow was quite simple. At the beginning, we were just searching for different resources. We just needed to know which data are already there and which data do we have to create ourselves. So therefore, we were just searching for city data, for different maps, for character locations, but unfortunately, there weren't much. Then we just thought about the libraries we want to use, and after we've decided to use Leaflet, Bootstrap, and jQuery, we've created our base map setup. Therefore, we just used a blank map and added, for example, region names, rivers, cities, the seas, and we've created 5 different zoom levels therefore. So we have tiles for the different zoom levels with different information, all made by ourselves. Took some time, but I think you'll like it. Then we had to gather data. So therefore, we needed the locations of the cities. So we just had to map the coordinates of the normal cities to the coordinate system of our map. We also had to get the character data, which we get from the database. And then, of course, we had to map it all, make the connection to the database of Project A, and also uploaded our city data. And right now we are debugging the whole thing and adding some small enhancements and features like that. But let's stop talking about it. We're just going to show it to you. So when you start at the highest zoom level, you nearly see nothing. By zooming in, you can see more information. So we also added priority for the different cities, and this is zoom level 2, or zoom level, no, this is zoom level 3. You just see the most important cities like, of course, King's Landing, Casterly Rock, Riverrun, Winterfell, Castle Black, and when zooming into it, you can see that new tiles are loading with more detail. For example, now you can see the river name, here the name of the coast, and you can see even ruins or little cities or inns. And yeah.
Coming back to your question, you asked what we got from the map. So basically we got the background tiles from HBO. So background tiles means no labels at all, just this map we got from HBO, but already colored in tiles.
Yeah, so just this.
Okay. So we wrote a little
nothing more.
We put the map together in one image, put this image into Photoshop and made labels. And then wrote another script and cut this down, and so we have 2 layers added. One layer is our layer, so the text is all done by us. The background layer is from HBO, so no text was given.
So this is everything we received from HBO.
And the cities are already on a dynamic layer. They are loaded from the database in the end, and we just display the labels and the cities dynamically. This is not a tile layer, this is just Leaflet. This is in CSS and HTML.
Well, and then of course we wanted to add characters, therefore we have the sidebar, and we wanted to do something more than just show locations. Because, for example, nearly every character was once in King's Landing, but we want to know if they were at the same time in King's Landing. So therefore we have here a sidebar. You can type in the names. Right now we've only implemented the paths of Edak and Caitlin. The other paths are coming the next days. And for all of the most important characters we can include paths as there is enough information. On the less present characters we can just show points as there is no real information about it. And of course you can use this timeline to not spoil yourself if you haven't seen all the episodes. So here you can see the season and the episode, where you start and where it ends. And yeah, as probably all of you know, net died at the end of season 1, so therefore we are displaying it with a skull. Hope I didn't spoiler someone. And now, now we've added the path of Caitlin as well. So therefore, while using the timeline, you can see how they traveled at the same time and if they have met while traveling or not. Yeah. And we won't go any further with the timeline, I think. Otherwise, I'm gonna spoil you as well.
So you can also, if the map is too crowded, you can just say, yeah, I want it just from episode season 2. So this is the path of Caitlin from episode 2. So to select it. Yes.
Yeah, you can add characters. You can also remove them. For example, when we want to remove net, we have an X up there, so we just throw them out of the map. And we also have more information on the characters. So if you click right there, you get a link to the wiki, and you can read all of the information which is in the wiki.
In the end, this will be provided by Project F. We have already made some API. We are finishing them this weekend, so Project F can use this.
And another task we should do is providing information on the location. So therefore, when you click on a city, you can just see the wiki link as well. Find out everything about the city you want to know.
So
that's the most important part.
These models are from Bootstrap, so we included Bootstrap to show this model. If you click on more info there, you just get these models. And yeah, also this polygons.
Yeah, and the last feature we just added yesterday, that's a surprise for you, are realms. So we decided to display realms as well. And we're just working on it. It's not totally perfect right now. We have some small bugs because we have to create the polygons ourselves with a small editor we are using just by clicking at the points. And as you can see at the coast as well, it's quite time consuming. But we think we'll finish it in time, and then also add the realms for Essos as well. And Essos, Westeros and Essos.
You can see it if I zoom out. We have also labeled it.
Regions.
Yeah, there you can see it's Essos and Westeros. And we are planning on coloring the realms in maybe the colors of the houses, but we will have to test if it looks good or if it's just too colorful then. And
what realms?
Realms, the territories and areas of the different houses. So can you just
Like a political map.
use it again? Yeah, like a political map. So for example, you are having here the north, we have to add labels, therefore maybe then you have the lands of always winter, you have the reach, the whale, the stormlands, Storne, yeah, the different realms.
Fancy.
Yeah, we are planning on having, when you are hovering it, you can just display labels like in our cities. Leaflet can do that. When hovering on the realm, you can just display the information like a label.
Show the label.
When you're displaying it permanently, like on the cities, it's just too crowded. Further questions?
We have a little feature.
We have at the moment we have 2 paths, but we can show as many as paths are there. So at the moment 2, but we will continue in it. In principle, yes.
Cool. How many coordinates do you have for characters? Do you know?
We made a little editor, so you can say you can just click it and you have the coordinates. So we have as many coordinates as we have clicks.
Yeah, but how much can you pull out of the database for each character? Like
Nothing.
Right now you don't have anything.
We can't. We have an editor. We just read through the wiki article.
But you're going to be pulling it. How are you going to? It's a polyline.
It's a polyline. We wrote a nice little editor where we can click our own polylines.
Manually.
Yes.
I'm going to show you an editor.
You can't do any. The problem, like we didn't mention it really, is the wiki. They have several attempts to make a lat long for Westeros. Then some fan projects made another attempt to make lat long coordinates for Westeros. but everyone uses a different base maps. The base maps aren't consistent at all, so we just decided on this base map, but there is no coordinate system for it really, because another problem is Alex told normal tiles are just doubled, but HBO decided to multiply the time size by some very nasty comma value, like 2 dots, 1 and 4 in the digits between, and we have our own coordinate system defined, otherwise it wouldn't work. So we can't really use the...
What you're loading right here is just the editor for the coordinates, so I can just click it, creating a polygon.
And normally there are cities in there, like to have the pins fixed on the cities, but to your database issues there are no cities there.
Then I get my coordinates here, and well, as you can imagine, for the other realms it's just a really huge list.
Yeah.
So Westeros took me about 3 or 4 hours, just Westeros, and when I'm thinking of Essos, the coast is even larger.
So wait, we can potentially open up this editor to the outside world and start having people crowdsource all of the characters. That's where they are.
Yeah, it would be but when you're planning on doing this, we have to document our API.
Yeah.
Because it's really just a mess.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. Like, you only get the characters directly from the database.
And the characters and and some parts the cities, but I backed up the cities after they were deleted yesterday. So this actually uses a static copy of the cities.
Okay.
So.
But is the plan to merge those 2 APIs?
Yes, this is. We just wanted to open the issues not before our presentation, because when we start working and we have some mess, and we just had, I think, a chat yesterday with Michael. Some thoughts. Yes.
Sorry, for the level 02, is it a little small? I don't know, my opinion.
What's small?
The level 02 of the map.
The level 0 zoom.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it small?
There's no information on this.
Yeah, there is no information. If you zoom in, you can see the continents, so Essos, Westeros, and the different seas.
What are you doing?
What he's saying is you should limit the maximum.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, what are you defaulting?
Maybe another name.
Default.
And we haven't limited, because when using it on a small screen, we just started it with the little map. So when you're running it on your phone, you have the little map and can zoom in, so if you have an overview.
This one.
This one is the default. The default is just fitting it into the bounds, so you can see the whole map. And because the size is already always doubled or halved when zooming in or out, or almost, we have this little black corners there. Yes?
You could get the screen size and then set a minimum level, right?
What?
You could get an experience screen size.
Yes, of course we could do that, but
then you don't get all of the information. So if you want to know what's the name of the continents, you zoom out and you see them.
It's like
you just get those one information, because we made the labels with Photoshop to just have them right.
And it's like in Google Maps. You can zoom out all the way and have the view of the whole world in small, but you aren't forced to show the map in small. So I see no point in forbidding the user to do this. It's just we can forbid this, but I think it makes no sense. Yes.
What Google Maps does is it posts multiple instances of the world beside each other when you zoom out far enough.
I don't know if this makes sense for Westeros, because when you're having some other charts, they are making some more continents there and there, so just wrapping it around would be possible, but I don't know whether that makes sense or not. Book is finished yet.
No, that's usually the representation that you would get in the book. That's usually the representation that the fans are accustomed to. Yes. Other questions for this group?
You're so awesome.
I opened up a few issues for you, but they are just minor fixes.
So.
All right, very nice job.